Hi, I'm Chris from AirWindows, and what I'm bringing you today is a plugin that's been pretty hotly sought after, but there's going to be a fair bit of explaining in here, so I'll do my level best to get it so you understand what's going on. This plugin is ADClip7. Now, ADClip's been through a bunch of different versions. This latest version has a couple of changes from the last audio unit only version. It's bundled together low frequency and high frequency kind of supplements into this enhanced control, and is doing a lot of stuff sort of under the hood to make it work better. What I should do is demonstrate it, but before I do that, firstly I'll point out this is bit shift gain. That can be used to cut the volume way back for when I start showing how most intensely I can make this pump the volume up. And this is Julian's loudness meter. I think it's a fairly early version. And that's going to show us what this audio is doing. So let's start with empty pictures here and all of our stuff turned off. Now what you can see here is that you've got this thing called LUFS. It's kind of the same thing as dB, and a bunch of other controls and things. And what we can do is start cranking it up like so. Now ADClip is a clipper, so what you see here is these little monitors there. They're saying we've gone into true clipping. Now there's an interesting thing about that I should point out before we get too heavily into this, because this is going to become important. This thing here says true peak max. That happens when this goes on. True peak max is monitoring whether the analog chain is going to clip. Now I'm going to ask you to observe something. Here's Stealth Kit Jam. Stealth Kit Jam is not being clipped. See that? 0.5 dB true peak max with no limiting. This is strictly within the range of what you get out of mastered audio. There are no peaks here, but for all of that, we're still seeing a lot of heavy peaking going on with that. See, we've got 1 dB true peak max. Over some of that bright tambourine stuff. Now, ADClip will be able to make that kind of thing louder, although it is a clipper with some enhancements on it. So if we use that, what we're going to get is the audio of this and the bass and everything straight up clipped. This is not going to act like a limiter. You'll be able to hear the grunge. The way to use it is to avoid slamming it so hard that the whole thing is just one big scrunch. But observe this behavior. I'm going to dial it back a little bit, and then we're going to push it until it's starting to just break up, but watch what the true peak does. We'll still push it, but we're pushing 4 dB on top of that. We're not getting an additional 4 dB out of the true peak. Sometimes it's not even peaking in at all. The way this works is ADClip is kind of limiting the amount of true peak that you can get. So when the onset of the hottest transients coming out of nowhere, it'll let it push fairly far, and then it'll dial back again. So it resists having a lot of continuous true peak scrunch going on. The idea is to be able to get it so that you have a very heavily pushed, like that's getting close to 9 or 8 dB. That's already a lot louder than you would normally use, and the loudness range is almost nil here. We can also do something else. The soften control manages the balance between lows and highs and the reinforcement, but also ought to be able to suppress some of that true peak stuff. Let's see how it does. That tambourine is really tough on this. So yeah, we're doing a full-on see how we can make it break kind of situation. But I would remind you of this. Without any clipping at all, we're still getting substantial true peak overload. This is not always easy for audio processors. I'm pretty sure Voxengo Elephant is exceptionally good at avoiding this true peak stuff, but then there's a lot of other people who intentionally throw intersample peaking on just to make the output behave like it's louder. Because of course the whole point of these clippers and insane loudness machines is making stuff sound far too loud. While I'm at it, why don't I use StealthKit to demonstrate another feature? ADClip works like this. We've got your boost. I'll put the soften back. I'll be able to manipulate it shortly. Enhance exaggerates the amount of effect that you get out of the reinforcement thing that I'm doing. Let me just put that back to 0.5. But we have extra modes going on here. Here's the dry. And of course, you can boost. This is a gain match. Using this, it's turning it down as much as you're clipping it for the purpose of having monitoring that won't fool you. You can plainly hear what damage is being done. And that's actually an interesting way if you really needed to do something as cleanly as possible, stepping on the output of something and getting it so that your true peak is going to behave itself. Because if we do this gain match, you can see it says like, oh, 0.4, huh? I'll boost to 0.6, and now I'm down to about 0.1, and then I can go, okay. Let's throw 1 dB of gain onto here. See what we have on our true peak measurement. And if I'm not mistaken, that's what Mastered for iTunes demands. Is the no more than minus 0.1 on your true peak. So that is ADClip being used not really to make stuff louder so much as just to handle some of these things. Here, I'll tell you what. Bit shift gain after all that, we can still see what the meter's doing, but I can talk over it more comfortably. So, we have a pretty consistent true peak max, and if we turn it off, it sounds kind of similar. And turning it on, see our integrated LUFS loudness units is up and around 13 or so, but if we do it over again, I'm boosting 1 dB but in gain match mode, and it's about a dB lower. That's kind of what it's supposed to be. But it's a little better at hanging on to the true peak behavior. And of course, if I keep pushing it in this mode, it's going to hold it at pretty much that same output level. Funny thing about that, your 13.7 or so, that's just a hair hotter than what YouTube or Spotify would like to see for streaming. We'll bounce it back to here. And at 2 dB, this is giving us like 0 loudness range, but that's fine. That's not really what we're working on. So you can kind of use it for that. However, there's more to this. I'm going to show you something else, still using StealthKit Jam. I just showed you gain match, and gain match will continue to, well, here, I'll show you the most extreme version of it. If we're in gain match, it'll just stomp on the output if you're trashing everything. Because it's turning it down, if we did likewise with this trashing, I'll just do this for a moment, it'll be horrible. This is the real volume. Notice that with even that atrocious, disgusting amount of blast, we still hit only 2.5 dB true peak max, even though that's 18 dB of clipping into the processor. Here's that final mode that I hadn't showed you before. This existed in a couple of versions of ADClip, but this is now sort of modified. Clip only. If we start turning it up, you're hearing only the moments that it's actually clipping. And the loudness meter is going to be very confused by this, but that's fine. But you're not hearing just only that. Let's turn this enhance off. This is just raw ADClip. This is ADClip being used only to hit these clips. That's what's being removed from the sound. And if we turn it back to, say, gain match, that's raw, and that's the clip. And you can start to hear, since it is a clipper, some of those bass notes are showing obvious clipping. This type of thing, you want to be careful about using a clipper on this type of content because it will become obvious. A clipper is more suited towards like atonal percussive spikes coming in. And you can see very plainly using this that that's exactly what we're clipping off. But it goes beyond just that. I had enhance at 0.5. Let's turn it all the way up and see what happens. This is what ADClip is doing to reinforce things like lows that are being clipped off. It's storing that stuff up and finding a way of putting it back into the sound. As a result, we can do stuff kind of like this. And that's at the regular output volume. All it's doing is it's subtracting the main sound. It gets to be almost as loud as the body of the music. What that means is if we have gain match going, because we may as well, I'm going to go between no enhance and full enhance, and then you'll be able to see what this enhanced stuff is doing. No enhance. Then we'll blast the enhance. So you can see it's storing up some of the extreme low frequency swings that are going into the clipping. They're not quite long enough to have bass notes be coming through or anything, but they are long enough to get into the enhance mode stuff and come through on the clip only setting, like this. Let's go farther. Let's start hearing. Oh no, I have an even better idea. Well, we could go to Alien Kittens. You never heard it this way, huh? Let's have all that thunderiness going on. Then, gain match. A little grunge, a little grind. Oh, let's have more. You can hear that these lows and rumbles are being thrown into the clip part as well. If we take it out, you can hear a real difference between that and no enhance. All the lows go away and you have this grindy distortion. Crank the enhance right up and you have this heavy sub on the output, but the output is still performing the same way that it would if you had just an ordinary clipper. But the ordinary clipper doesn't bring this low stuff in. And while we're futzing around with Alien Kittens, our everybody's favorite annoying track, it's annoying to me because it shows up some of the problems in things like clippers very obviously. This low frequency stuff going on in the background. Let us throw on clip only. And I'm going to show you something interesting. Here's one of the effects soften has. I haven't talked about that very much. Soften means if you turn it way up, you'll be getting all of this lows type stuff, but the attack into clipping is the softening effect that ADClip has is maximized. You turn it right down and it's getting a lot closer to emulating just straight up digital clipping with no compensation whatsoever. But it's also affecting enhance mode at the same time, and I'll show you how. So that's just gross. Now we're going to turn it up to maximum soften. Hear how it's gone a lot softer? We're not getting nearly as much of the high frequency reinforcement. And if we turn it on a gain match, it's grungy as hell, but it's not exactly sparkly. Now we'll turn it back down to very low soften value. And now you're hearing all this nastiness, but not so much of that low thumping. And that sounds kind of like this. Which is honestly not all that bad considering the amount of low frequency grunge going through here and considering that we're throwing 8 dB onto a track that's already maximized. And then as we start bringing soften up, we get a lot more grunge and scrunch, but we also get those lows coming out. And then lastly, we'll go back to clip only. And dial it right back until we are seeing just a little of this stuff. Most of this stuff is bringing the thumpiness out. But we'd like to also bring out some of the high frequency stuff that's coming around. Let's just assume we're trying to make this stupid loud. So many people using stuff like ADClip seem to want to make stuff super loud. So let's adjust this until we're hearing more of the highs. Just a little of that scrunch. I'm kind of dialing in it so that it sounds like there's a kick drum in there. The lows are coming through. And so a little scrunchiness going on. And the enhance is way cranked. Remember, if I turn it off, I get this. Let's take this a little farther. We're going to pull back this low frequency crunch until it's balancing with this. So that's an interesting balance. Since it's a synthetic thing, I can dial it in very, very closely. Then, if I put gain match on, what we hear is this. See, it's not so high that you're getting loud scrunches on bass notes and things. In fact, I can even pull it back a tiny bit more. We have what sounds like a kick drum, and we have a random sort of scratchiness going on. And then this is what we get. And remember, this is all with bit shift gain on, so gain match like this would be more like this. And we have all of our huge heavy bass coming through, but wait, there's more. Not that there should be more. This is all terribly wrong, but there's still more. I haven't showed you full blast yet. So we'll turn this off. Bit shift gain is off. We're blanking this entirely. I'm going to roll it back a little bit so that we just play through here. And this is probably going to be all I have to say about this. I'm going to turn on the full blast, and you'll be able to hear sort of the CD version if you're using this tool just to make stuff stupid loud without automatically mangling literally everything. Here's our regular track, which is already maximized as loud as it can go. As you can see, it's doing about -10. It's already louder than you want for iTunes or YouTube, Spotify, any of those things. They would already be turning this down. But we're not worried about that. We're talking about mastering stuff for CDs in just the way that you shouldn't really ever do. And you're asking, what can this tool really do when you push it to the limit? I can do this. Back to the gain match. So that was what? Well, let's look at it again. That's 9 dB. No, more like 8. Getting pretty close to the danger zone of -6 dB loudness units full scale. Integrated is getting up into the -7 range, and 3.3 loudness range. If you're doing this kind of nonsense, you don't even care. You're just trying to make everything as loud as you can. And the true peak max is still only about 0.1 dB with all of that craziness going on. And then, of course, if we want to get even stupider, we can just boost more. have around -6 LUFS at short term, and far too loud, and we're crunching it up quite aggressively. Now, before I'm quite done, since I'm making a full-on explanation of how all this stuff works, what I'm going to do is go back to some of the other tracks. For instance, here is Empty Pictures. Let's make this go back to normal again. It's quieter so that you can hear me talk. And we could do the same deal. We can do clip only until we start hearing what's happening. Again, this is just the clipping, and then if we bring enhance in, we start bringing that like sort of super bass. And the super bass is just rearranged bass clips being put in there so that it will fit somehow. So this is raw, and then if I turn this on, it helps with the more busy, like rocky style mix here with more going on, because the instruments sound less like test tones, so it can be a little harder to hear what's going on in terms of the distortiness. But one thing about this is I can still hear some scrunching. So what I'm going to do is go back to that. We can even go to clip only. There's a big scrunch. And now that we've got that, let's hear what it sounds like in the loudness matched mode. And then lastly, we'll demonstrate what's really going on here, which is the same on-off again thing. This is what it starts out as. And this is how much we can push it. Back to clip only. And that's what we're doing in the middle of all this. And lastly, we have another track which is quite different. This one's a lot more kind of spiky. As you can see, clip only is just giving us this result. You can't hear all that much of it. And the points there, since it's using real drum recording, it's not quite as edgy as like your electronic stuff going on. We can give a little bit of enhance here. And our result is kind of like that. So if we were to do gain match, what we'd get as a result is kind of like this. what we got. Gain match. And then, of course, if we do the normal mode, this is the amount of gain boost that you can get off of a funny, kind of thin, spiky sounding track like this. Starting out at very little loudness, like 18 dB down. And if we turn it on, it's a pretty big difference. And with that, we can bring that mix up to about -11 integrated. And then if we want to take it and say, let's do it for Spotify. Let's take this one and make it sit around -14 loudness units using the same settings. We'll zero it out and we'll give it a shot. So we're at about 14 or so. And that's already more than we need. We don't need any more than that. And there's your 14, actually it's a 14.1, so there's a little more gain in here. And that's going to give you more or less the Spotify approved loudness. And sort of smooth stuff together a little bit. Compared to this. And what we had is this. Let's see, where does it actually clip? There we go. There was a clip. Pushing it to YouTube or Spotify levels for this particular track doesn't require very much. Like there's a little bit of a splat there. You know, there's room to go here. So let's see what that sounded like. That's kind of how this works. If you were aiming for streaming services and stuff like that, you might still want to be reining in clips and things, but you're not necessarily going to need to push the overall kind of RMS loudness, this integrated loudness unit thing, too far. The world's gone a little bit beyond your CD-based loudness wars. It's become kind of old hat. Like, you push this. Push it more and more. With a track like this, it's actually kind of hard to push it that far. You don't have drums and things to hit, but you can push this to, you know, -8, -7, and it sounds half decent. This much of a gain boost. And remember, I've put it onto pitch shift gain, so What that really sounds like is this. And that's the parts that are being clipped off. This is a lot to understand, I know. It's a complicated subject. I mean, the simplest part of the subject is like this. A little card that says, you know, YouTube and Spotify and stuff, you're going to want this integrated thing to be -14, not -8. For iTunes, you're probably going to want it to be more like -16, not -8. But most of the reason people are excited about this particular tool is because for whatever reason they want to make their CDs become explosively, unbelievably distorted and loud. And well, we can do that to some extent. And more relevantly, we can do that well pushing a degree of lows that you otherwise just wouldn't get. That is ADClip7. It's the result of a lot of work in this kind of thing. And as you may know, I do this Patreon. And that's the way I'm earning money these days rather than trying to sell this for $60 a pop. This was one of the $60 a pop. Actually, it ended up becoming 50 at some point there. I sold it through Kagi Shareware until Kagi went out of business. Still owes me hundreds of dollars. I'll never see. Welcome to the world of the internet, and welcome to the world of the future. So the world of the future is, I'm giving this to you. ADClip7 is freely downloadable as audio unit, VST, and PC VST in both 32 and 64-bit. And I hope you like it. If you like me continuing to do this work, the most effective way of making sure of that is to jump on the Patreon at like, I don't know, $1 a month, $2 a month. I'm less comfortable with people throwing like, you know, $30 and $80 and stuff because it seems like when they do that, then they change their mind and it looks like a whole big disaster. I would rather have large numbers of people with smaller amounts of money. And $2 a month is like, what, 12, 24. $1 a month is I could do math. I can do math. $1 a month is $12 a year. And of course, if you leave or, you know, something attacks your bank account and you can no longer do it, you get to keep the plugins. This is something somewhat different from most subscription services because it's not a subscription service. But $1 a month is $12 a year. 2 is $24 a year. If you were going to buy one of my plugins at the $50 amount, that's still, even 4 a month is still less than buying one of my plugins a year. Now, if you want to count how many I've done, you totally should, because if you count how many I've done, then you'll find other stuff that you can use, and that makes me happy. So, enjoy ADClip7. It's one of the more big deal plugins I've been putting out, and I've made some big improvements on it, so it's even better than it ever was before. And I hope you like it.